Good morning all, and welcome to the final meeting of the Otago Southland Regional Transport Committee for this year, I think. Regrettably, you've got me today chairing this as chairing me as a late apology, but in order to start the meeting and welcome, I've asked Phil from Southland to do the karakia.
Hei, tui I tātou, tui I runga, tui I raro, tui ki roto, tui ki waraho, tui I te whakaro.
In order to start this meeting, and because we're going to give people a few moments to ensure that they're online, it's about 50-50 at the moment, online and in attendance, I think. So I'm Kate Wilson, Chair today. I'm Otago Regional Councillor, and we'll go through the members first and then the staff, just to make it easy for people to know. If that's great, if you can turn the cameras on, thank you. And so it's members first, then the staff, just so that we can balance out who they are and where they are. So going to my right.
Yeah, Bruce Graham, CDC.
Marina Christine Menzies, Southland District Council.
Phil Morrison, Environment Southland.
Online, Jim.
Yeah, Jim Thompson, Waitaki District Council.
Joe Stringer, Gore District Council.
James.
Kia ora all, James Cagle, NZTA.
I think that's all we've got. There's some chat coming in as well, but I'll let you manage that, Jen. And so go round from right to left is Jane on the table.
Yeah, Russell Hawkes from Transport Planner and Environment South.
Lee Larry, Policy Planner, Environment Southland. I'm Bear, Strategic Manager at Southland District Council.
Doug Rogers, Strategic Asset Planning Manager, ICC.
Kia ora, Daniel Basubis, Transport Planner for Otago Regional Council.
Alan Chapman, Senior Transport Planner from Dunedin City Council.
Henry von Sale, Gore District Council.
Jean Jeffrey, OIC support.
Kia ora, I'm Lorraine Sheen, I'm Manager of Transport at Otago Regional Council.
Great. Chad.
Kia ora koutou, Chad Barker, NZTA.
Joshi. Joshi's here but not speaking. And then we've got one member in the public gallery. Hello, Jim.
Yeah, Jim Crowsley from Transporting New Zealand.
Excellent, nice to have you here.
Thank you.
Hi, Joshi. No, no, it's Fred, sorry.
Yeah, no.
Yeah. Hello. Hello, Rhiannon. Are you NZTA?
Yes, sorry, NZTA.
Well, welcome. Thank you. I'm sorry, I think Toshi's gone beside you. You've just taken over someone else's spot on the gallery, and I got slightly confused. Can first, just doing some admin. Can you all hear us? Okay. Brilliant. Feel free to wave or anything if I don't see your hands up, or intercede if we. I don't. We've got one apology from Stuart Duncan. He's may join us later on Zoom, and Jeremy McPhail. I'll move that those apologies be accepted. Sorry.
Apologies from Jim and Janine.
Oh, Jim and Janine. Thank you, Jim O'Malley and Janine Benson. Any other apologies? Oh, Murray, sorry, Murray Hasler. We've got you and Seth Henry. Thank you. Has anyone heard from Quentin? Because we're normally. No. We'll take. I'll accept those, but some of them may be late. People coming late. Seconded. Someone seconded that. Thank you, Christine. All in favour, please say aye. Carried. Thank you. Now, very shortly, hopefully this time, but it's going to be another 10 minutes away. We're going to have Julia McLean coming on for the New Zealand Equestrian. That didn't happen last time. I'm sure it will this time. We've also, does anyone know, and I don't know if it was CODC or, no, it'd be Queenstown Lakes, getting the Albertown people here, or James, you know if they're actually attending today? No,
Would suggest not.
suggest not. So we can, Hmm? yeah, we'll do the minutes and we'll just carry through the meeting. Now, the minutes from the meeting of the 23rd of September, the meeting chair was me, not Jeremy, but apart from that, were there any other changes, comments, or matters that weren't correct? Anyone? Everyone happy with that? Minutes? I'm happy to move them as chair. Seconded, thank you, Bruce. Any discussion? All in favour, please say aye. Aye. Against? Carried. We may just keep on moving because, oh yeah, the action text, sorry, yes. Petition from Waititi, that was given to us and accepted by us. We didn't put an action beside that. I understand.
It's been forwarded to NZTA to respond to,
Yeah,
but given the current speed management situation, I think we thought this what the response will be.
James may like to speak to that. I'm sure there's always exceptions, but this may or may not be one of them.
No, it's not a substantive response. It really is just a question: has it been forwarded? Because if it has, it has been. Hasn't. I'm not sure I've seen it, and if I could be linked into that, then it doesn't get lost in our machine. That's all.
Thank you. We'll ensure that that happens, James, and I won't be picking on you again today on that issue. There'll be other things though, don't worry.
That's okay, Kate.
Potential Albert Town community, we thought they were going to present. Did that come through you, or was it through QLDC or someone else? It was from Quinton. So can we just put an action that we ask that be followed up with Quinton, please? And ensure that they do know about it. And that's, sorry, that's a problem changing chairs as well. The committee asked NZTA to collate information on the delivery, and that's going to come up later, so that's on item 1. James Cake was to engage with Stuart Duncan regarding risk adverse counsel in relation to
So,
NZ. I get that. What's the
sorry,
G?
guide.
Oh, guide.
New Zealand
Yeah.
Guide for Temporary Traffic Management. So look, on this, I don't know what that action means. I mean, I was there for the conversation. I mean, lots of questions were raised. My view, in the absence of Stuart telling me that he's got a definite conversation he wants to have with me, is that it would be useful for this committee to have a presentation on the guide and its implementation, and I can help facilitate that. Well, as I say, I'm happy to have a conversation with Stuart, but I think there is a more substantive conversation on the guide to take place.
So this is a question both to staff and to members. Would we think that would be beneficial? Some of you probably all over this and some aren't, and it would be helpful to have those that are all over it in the room with those that may not be. So are we happy to do that at the next meeting? That's a general nod, which you won't hear online and probably can't see. So thank you. I will we'll put that as an action for you, James, who always delivers. So that's fabulous. Thank you very much. So we've got that noted. There's a bit happening around the table with people taking notes. So Jen, that was under item 9.3. We're going to add to the next agenda that James is going to facilitate a presentation on the NZGTTM, which is the Guide to Temporary Traffic Management, and so that we can understand where that sits. 9.3 was the low cost, low risk, and that information has been presented and was in item 3. Thank you, James. And Russell, you on 9.6 is going to ask that the presentations and those are attached.
They were attached.
Yeah, they were attached.
Or they were
Sent out straight after the last meeting.
with the agenda.
Yeah. Now, what I haven't done before I go into the next thing, and because we've got now 5 minutes before the next speaker for public presentation comes, is I've haven't confirmed the agenda. Stuart had asked me to have a discussion or to preempt a discussion on STEDs, which are stock truck effluent disposal sites. And I think there's quite a few around Otago. There is an issue in Waitaki, and I'm they're not here, but you are, Jim, so we can discuss that. But I'll do it at the end under general business. So there's a problem with who's paying. So in the past, ORC has built them, the local councils have had to manage them. There's been a problem where trucks can't be emptied because they've been closed, and AFCO or other businesses aren't taking the effluent, and it's causing a huge issue. And there has to be a much better system, and I don't know that Southland has many.
Yeah.
So if we can raise it at the end, and Jim looks very keen to talk about this. Jim, because now Julia is now here, so but Jim, I give you 5 seconds because I'm not going to give you a speaking rights because you haven't asked for it today. But now Julia's here, but it's just because we're running a wee bit early. What do you want to say on that, Jim?
Oh, look, just to clarify, so ANZCO, it was actually ANZCO that made an announcement to all of their carrying transport operators that they would no longer accept effluent at their sites. So that's caused a problem. And the issue we've got from a regional council perspective is the closing of the one at Shag River and the one at the Pukuri site, which are NZTA sites. So they were shut down, coned off, and no one can access them. And the industry really needs them opened.
Thank you. Very good. That's good to know. That will come towards the end of the meeting.
Okay.
We'll only be raising it as an issue. We may be seeking some information afterwards. Welcome, Julia. Thank you for coming along today. Sorry you couldn't make last time. I'm Kate Wilson. We've just gone around the meeting, but everyone, you've got many councils represented here today, either with staff or with councillors. Thank you very much for your information you've already shared. You're from the New Zealand Equestrian Association, and you want to talk to us. So feel free, go and then we'll ask you questions afterwards, if that's okay.
Yeah, absolutely. Kia ora, and thank you so much for allowing me to present to you this morning. I think you're number 13 with respect to regional transport committees across New Zealand, and really important, and I'm highly motivated to ensure that consistent messaging is being delivered to all regional and local government leaders, and including your key representatives, New Zealand Police, Waka Kotahi. When it comes to road safety, this is the area that I'm particularly concerned about, and so too are the MPs that I have secured support from for this work, and I've met with them face to face. New Zealand Police have been incredible by way of their support for the road safety message Pass Wide and Slow. And this is an international road safety message, and I'm the co-founder of the New Zealand Pass Wide and Slow group, which is now looking to build a website. So the Pass Wide and Slow road safety message is here to stay. And that message has fallen out of the vulnerable road user work that I have led. 16 years ago, I suffered a head injury when my horse randomly bolted on a local road as I headed to the beach. It was a really windy day, and a witness saw the accident, but I have no recollection of what happened. All I know is something spooked him, and the consequences were disastrous for me. I lost my career as a broadcast journalist, and I had a lot of dreams. And thankfully, my ability to write has not been lost. And 16 years later, I have more clarity in my brain, and I'm so proud that my brain has been able to lead this work and bring and unite the equestrian community once and for all for a really important issue. I spent 3 years in local government leading the road safety committee in my district, and it was there that I was very aware that there's very little dollars, but very good intention behind trying to mitigate and prevent issues on the road. And the stories that I have heard from riders, children, adults going out on the road with no road safety messaging or education to the driver network is appalling. It's scary. to the extent one incident I couldn't sleep that night after hearing, and the next day I reached out to the trucking fraternity in New Zealand, the 3 associations, New Zealand Police and AA and Waka Kotahi. And I'm really pleased to be able to share with you that the buy-in to do something about this is incredible. The buy-in from regional transport committees and local government, I'm really, really proud, because it's common sense and people get it. But sadly, I don't know, sometimes something has to be brought to the table before something's done. And I've worked my butt off for 3 to 4 months to provide evidence, and there is no evidence. That's what's appalling. No statistics, no data is captured when a rider or a person rings New Zealand Police to complain about their treatment on their road, the abuse, the near misses, vehicles touching stirrups, going at such speed, people using their vehicles as a weapon. I've had volunteer firefighter talk to me about the incidents she's attended and where a car was used on the hindquarters of her horse and it reared and she fell through the windscreen. Those sorts of stories aren't captured in this country with respect to data. And I know damn well that without data, no one really advocates or does anything for a community of people, because every dollar has to be justified. So I'm sharing this with you because it really does need to change. And at local government, this is where grassroots issues first are heard. And then it's your responsibility to elevate it and do something about it as to where it goes next. And when it's not elevated or listened to, things continue. So as riders, we don't actually like being on the roads. I ride with my daughter on circuits to exercise our horses for endurance events that we absolutely love doing. And we're always looking for distance and safety. So sometimes when we do have to go out on the road, it's not enjoyable. You are always looking to mitigate. You are always doing your best to navigate and spend less time on a road. But unfortunately, because of our determination in the transport legislation as an other road user, we're not included in off-road pathway provision for our safety. And yet, look at us, we're highly vulnerable. We're on an animal that has a mind of its own. You touch us, you hit us, there's consequences. So we are asking that we are formally recognised as a vulnerable road user in transport legislation. It's common sense, and it's happening elsewhere across the world. In terms of the UK Highway Code, is streets ahead. Horses have always been a vulnerable road user for years now, and now they're working hard for meaningful law that holds drivers culpable for the decisions that they make. Ireland, Northern Ireland, their road safety planning is leading in terms of their messages. Australia, Victoria State are having a conversation right now, and they tell me that if they are successful in determination of vulnerable road user status, then that will travel across the country. America are now starting to hold meetings, a Bill of Rights for their vulnerability to be recognised. So this isn't a foreign concept. And we also know that, road safety messaging needs to be explicit. So that's why we've brought the pass wide and slow message. Pass wide means 2 meters. Slow down. I wasn't going to get into the contentious issue of speed, but we all know that, a school bus with children, 20 Ks either way, common sense, we can't assume. So messaging needs to be explicit, and the pass wide and slow driver behaviour concept is having an effect. We've rolled out vis vests, high vis vests to riders, because the message being we need to do our bit and to be seen as one way in which we can message we care about our lives and we care about our animals. We held 50 awareness rides across the country in September. That was a big effort to coordinate, and my goodness, the reception across councils and with Waka Kotahi was so different. Some were very accommodating and approachable. Some local TAs weren't so. So we're hoping next year will be a lot more of a team effort, because what we're trying to achieve, you know, everyone benefits from. My children on bicycles pass wide and slow. You know, people in wheelchairs, walking dogs on the side of the road. Everyone benefits from a understanding of what does vulnerability look like and feel like, and what do road users need from all road users. The submission that that I've written and submitted to Parliament on behalf of the equestrian community is now sitting with the Petitions Committee, and so please don't think that just because that's in with central government that the work's done. By all means, we're looking for real meaningful change, and it does start at a local government level. And your road safety hats and your ability to listen and lead change would be really welcome by a big sector of community that has been forgotten for too long.
Thank you, Julia. Can I just ask, before we go around the table for questions, do you work, I mean, I see bike signs out regularly, and I do see horse signs out, the yellow ones. But do you work with individual TAs where there are presumably near pony clubs and or showgrounds and stuff to get those signs out, or is that something the TAs just do? Someone else around the table may be able to answer this. That is done regardless, because those horse signs certainly give an expectation that they're going to be areas of high use, and I know that they're regularly around pony clubs and showgrounds, but I don't know if they're regularly used.
So I don't believe there's any consistency to the rollout of signs. I have yet to have any discussion on who really has a game plan around that, other than when people maybe bring the issue to the table. And my work over this time has once again reinforced to me people's their inability, just their lack of understanding of where to take concerns. And so that is why establishing a Canterbury advocacy group and really culminating the equestrian community and sharing with them how to create change to save lives and to bring issues of concern to decision makers is really important. And I'm working hard to communicate that. But by all means, I really don't think there's consistency in signage across this country at all.
Thank you. The only other one is thinking about cycle races, which are different, but they actually self-administer their own signs where there's an event, so that it particularizes a certain road on a day where people might be using them, which is also a useful thing. Is there anything stopping equestrian doing that themselves if they were doing long hauls on roads?
In terms of, I guess, if you're talking about event management and traffic management, that's a costly exercise. And I know there are sports communities within the equestrian that are trying to stay away from roads now because it's killing their sport. Yeah. But with general, signage across the roading network, that's not our responsibility. I mean, we can bring the issues to road safety groups, but we do need to be heard, and we do need to be listened to by way of our accounts, because there is no data to reinforce what we're saying.
No, I totally appreciate that, Julia. I was just trying to think about the two different types of events, the temporary ones and the permanent signs, and how they were managed. So totally appreciate that. Are there any other questions? Jim's a good horseman up there. He'll appreciate these issues.
In terms of data, one of the things that I think people don't realise, there was a study done out of University of Waikato a few years ago on the economic activity generated by the individual pleasure horse owners, and it equates to a $12,000 spend per annum. Having just gone through foaling, I can see how that's quite easily achieved. But the thing is that where we get clusters around towns, and there's always protestation about the loss of productive farmland because someone wants to have a couple of horses. The economic activity actually generated probably surpasses what it would if it was running a mob of sheep. So there is some clout in terms of what you do for the local economy as well. I know the statistics need to be about near misses on the road, but the group probably has a higher level of advocacy that potentially than what they realise.
Thank you. It's a low bar this year, the sheep price, but yes, appreciate that.
Jim,
any
you're
other-
spot on in terms of the economic contribution. And 2011, there is no updated report. I have asked Equestrian Sport New Zealand to consider doing one, and I've spoken to Alex, the author of that document. 2011 and 12,000 per horse per annum. Yeah, we all know that's hugely understated in this day and age. But I just want to share with you the organisations that have brought together New Zealand RDA, New Zealand Pony Club, Te Hapere Hoiho, the Māori Association, Equestrian Sport New Zealand, and the New Zealand Advocacy Network, and then 35 other organisations and groups under those. It's been such a pleasure to work with this community of people. These are, the horse for some is their well-being. It is their retirement plan. For children, it is the difference between a great day and a crap day, in terms of an outlet from school or, purpose in their life and their skills that they get from looking after an animal and delivering on an animal that can sometimes create such disappointment and growing from that. So the learning opportunities and the ability to get out into the outdoors and enjoy this country, these people are not the ones that just go round in circles in an arena. They are socializing, they are networking, they are your police officers, your firefighters, your preschool teachers, your journalists, your mums and your dads. So I just feel for so long that the stereotype of a horse rider has been really not understood. But definitely when you think of the e-bike, I laugh to myself, but the horse is becoming that for many people, and they are willing to travel great distances to be welcomed in communities. That's the other thing. It's phenomenal how far people will travel. North and South Island. My family spent New Year's in the St. James National Park last year, and we met people from Wanganui that had come down specifically. So and we hosted a ride at Greystone Wines 2 weeks ago, and we had 113 entries, and it was so cool to see kids and adults, young and old. We had an 82-year-old woman ride Mount Grey where I live. She lives under the mountain. She's always wanted to get to the top. A bike is not an option. Walking is not an option, but her horse is an option. And you should have seen the smile on her face to be able to finally achieve it. So, I just share with you just the stories, but I won't share with you.
So we've got a question here from Bruce Graham.
Look, coming from a town that there is quite a few and quite active horse riders, and they generally ride on the sides of roads, and I've never heard of any incidents. So I put it down to the riders have always been there, so the motorists, etc., know all about it. So I wonder if it's just as much about education as opposed to legislation.
Legislation, unfortunately, determines how inclusion. and consideration. So legislation is critical to the long-term picture of this, but certainly the road safety messages and the social media and the media attention that has been given to this issue is helping with choices that drivers are making, and the stories of sharing coming in to me and other platforms is heartening. But certainly when you don't have any education at the driver licensing system for heavy and normal vehicles, the younger generation, foreign drivers, what do you expect? So back in the day when, there was more visibility of rural animal stock being moved on the road, sure, education and common sense may be a given, but certainly not now.
Okay, thank you. There are no other questions at the moment. Thank you very much, Julia. We will work out what we're going to do with that later, or there won't be a resolution at the moment on that. But thank you very much for bringing it to our attention. Thank you, Julia.
Thank you for having me. And I'm sorry I do come across as really strong and bold on this issue, but it's it's just
That's why we.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Welcome also to Tony Pickard from QLDC. Thank you, who's joined us. Thanks, Julia. Is there some other people from somewhere else? Stuart's there. He's finished his tailing and making the rest of the family do that now. But I need you. And he's right into Movember by the looks of things as well. Rebecca, welcome. I'm not sure if you're from a agency or not. Is Rebecca, where are you from, Rebecca? No.
Hey, I'm from QLDC. So I work with Alison and Tony in updating our TO and doing our bid and stuff. So I just thought I'd listen in and see what you guys were saying.
Thank you. Welcome to have welcome here. Okay, we're up to the staff reports. Really congratulations to the staff. I'm really impressed with the data we're getting this time round. It's a game changer. So we've got item 1 is the summary of achievements for the 2021 and 24 regional land transport plan, and I think Russell's going to take us through the report, which is for noting, but the graphs look impressive, and I think that's all thanks to the data availability.
Thanks, Chair. One of the things when I was trying to gather the data that's shown in the little graphs, I found that the data is all entered into the Transport Investment Online database by the individual councils. They have to do that every 12 months at the end of every financial year. And over the last few years, Transport Insights, which is the reporting tool that the Roading Efficiency Group have developed, have been gathering this data and looking at ways to display it. And we were just very fortunate that the 2024 information became live within Transport Insights the day before the reports had to come out. So there was a bit of a scramble at the end of that time to pick up these graphs. Now, as with all, I think with all graphs, they're easier to read than big lists of figures, but you've actually got to know what they're looking at. And these graphs in the main unit is actually linear kilometre, or at least lane kilometres. So that's how many lane kilometres of resealing, rehabilitations, gravel road metalling, etc., that have been carried out. I think that what it does prove is that what it indicates is that there are areas that, for whatever reason, there's the concentration has either been dropped for a period or increased for a period. So, and one that I just perhaps mention is we've heard reasonably regularly here that the core district haven't been putting enough gravel on their roads. Well, in fact, the graph, there is a graph that actually illustrates that quite well. On the bottom of page 13, where the second one from the right hand side of the page, you can see there that they were planning over the 2000 to 2023 period, or 2001, somewhere about that. They were planning on doing blue bars a lot more than they actually achieved, which means that for a period of 3 years there was a deficiency in terms of their gravel. Over the last 3 years, the last RLTP period, we actually put on more gravelling per lane kilometre than what their activity management plan was actually planning on. So the core district, that graph actually proves what people have been saying, that there's been a deficiency, but they're actually working on trying to do something about it. The graph that talks about bridges is a bit of an anomaly, and we're working out how we can do something about that, because it's actually also measured in lane kilometres, and probably Hartley's in a better position to talk about what that might mean than I am, because he was responsible for putting the information in. The state highways data is just shown as a table, and that's because the state highways at the present time are not don't report through the same channels into Transport Insights, but in fact that's in the process of changing. So in 3 years' time, in fact in 2025, I'm hoping we will be able to give on an annual basis a series of these graphs to you, a report, and you'll start seeing the state highway stuff come through as well. Low cost, low risk continues to be problematic in terms of achievements, etc., because there's so many different little items in it. And so at the end of the day, I'd suggest we've got some information there was provided. It's been taken as, if you like, as read, and we look for what we might be able to do better in the future, because there will be probably less items in that low cost, low risk area improvements. But we might be able to get more detail.
Yeah, I might actually split this up, because I think the first part, I think they're both important parts of the report, but I actually want to concentrate first on the delivery and just check that we're reading the graphs right, if I may, before we get into the low cost. And so any questions on that first part of the report, or I can lead off. And my question is, the bridges, I don't know what the expectation was, because a new bridge or a bridge renewal is fine, but I don't know what the expected. It's not the same way as planned or forecast and achieved. I'm not quite sure how I read that, or am I expecting too much on bridges? Because that is a big issue coming up, so we need to be able to do that.
Do you want to comment on that?
Yeah, I can do. I suppose the challenge maybe is in terms of also what data you're putting up front in terms of the system. Ross sort of alluded to, there's the numbers and the meters. With some of the data, out of memory now, you report on some information, but from a forecasting point of view, there's not an option to necessarily populate all of it. I have to comment on our one as an example. The way we also do it is the year the bridge is actually for 5-year payment rehabilitation. The year it's 100% completed is the year we reported in. So you might find that 1 year is a little bit lower than the next year, but I would have to just be a timing issue when the job is physically complete. Yeah, in terms of the actual bridge numbers, it's tricky because the volume versus the distance.
Yeah.
The length of bridge.
But there's no forecast on the bridge.
No. That's a dollar input.
Okay.
The other challenge, I suppose, with some of the aspects like the bridges, is you might put it in the program up front, but from a process point of view, and the funding's allocated, but you still have to go through
some hoops
before the funding is released. So could you actually have to get that funding or not?
And it's very clear later on in the papers. Okay.
Sorry, if you've got a big program, we've got a big deficit of bridges. If it doesn't, you just move down to the next one, the next one. But it would way down the list. So if you actually say that these are the 6 bridges we plan on doing micro grid for a year, but we actually got a list of 20 bridges. So yeah, which makes it, I suppose, trickier as to then for those 12, we've got to get the facility. Maximize everything that's located. Having this sort of like fully gathering to do it on the second price. Possibilities of really.
Right.
So I think, sorry, so from that point, you're just probably looking at funding and how much funding we receive this.
And I have to make an apology to Luther, because I read theirs incorrectly, because their kilometres are much greater than, in fact, some people put things measured in metres, but theirs is substantially more kilometres than most of the other councils. So it's hard, you have to make sure that you've read the y-axis, I think it's the y-axis, to get the understanding of how many kilometres they are, because they're all different. Yeah.
And Chair, if I can, there's another component to this. And that's that the data has been being entered by councils and has been required to be entered by the councils. To date, or probably increasingly over the last 3 years, that data has been used by NZTA and only to a limited extent back out in terms of presentation to councils, etc. Now that this is so freely available, and I might add that all of this information, if you look at Transport Insights, if you type that into your search and see engine, it will bring up the public interface, and you can see all of this information. So there's nothing, it's not secret squirrel stuff in the background. It's all come from data that's been entered, but it's on the public facing web pages. As everybody knows that there are more people looking at it, and in particular regional transport committee might start looking a bit more detail, not necessarily to hold people to account, but to understand what's going on, then the accuracy of the data will improve.
Yeah.
So I think this is I'm pretty sure that this is the first time that this data in this form has actually been put in front of a regional transport committee. And you know, I'd be interested in what James thinks of it as a presentation.
I think it's a lead on to you, James.
I was going to say that sounds like an invitation. Look, I think it's a great step forward. It's clearly still evolving. I'm myself just beginning to learn how to play with Transport Insights and what it can tell and show us. As an end of program, sort of end of 3-year summary, it's a good start. I hope the next 3 years are better. Really, my question actually, what I drag from this is, where can we use Transport Insights over the coming 3-year period to interrogate delivery within the cycle, if that makes sense. I think all the comments that have been made so far are right. I like what it's got. You can clearly see bridges need to do, we need to work on how we display bridges more. Some officers or members might want to talk to specific stuff that their bars throw out to them. I'm really looking forward to the NZTA stuff popping through Transport Insights too, because that will be commonality. I think this is great forward progress, but I don't have any other specific thoughts that pop from looking at the graphs yet.
I hope all councillors should be getting this generally to see, not just the ones in this room, in this committee. They should be seeing whether it's delivering. I don't, the only other question I had is the variance. It doesn't make sense to me, and am I the only one who doesn't understand the variance line? Because it seems to go up when there's been nothing spent, when it should be going, yeah.
So, that's about like the bridges, but when you, over the 3-year period, when you're putting the funding applications, you're putting in quantity of work expected over 3 years for respective years. So if you're not expecting to do any work potentially in a certain category, but then over the 3-year period and having to do some work, when you do your year-end report and you've done work, you will populate that you've done that work. But because you did your funding application up front, you have to put in, say, you've done 0 meters because we're not expecting to do any curb and channel as an example. You get to year 3 and you suddenly have to do 200 meters of curb and channel. Your variance will be that you've done 200 meters of curb and channel. So therefore, you won't have any plan, but you've done the work. You'll have
So if I look
variance.
at Central Otago District Councils, the third one along the second line, that's on page 12, and it's got right up high in 2022 when they didn't deliver anything. That's what I don't understand. And similarly, they're well under this graph above that on unsealed road metalling in 2023, and yet the line goes right up, which I would have thought a high line is. Oh, the variance is a negative variance.
Yeah, it could be a negative variance.
Ah, but then I see negative would go below the line for me. That's where I'm getting it wrong. Yeah, now I've answered my own question, sorry.
However, the question that I had, actually, Transport Insights, at the time that I was trying to get the list that I was picking this information up was, can you take the variance line off? Because I think it confuses people.
Yes, thank you.
And they said, not if you want it by 3 o'clock tomorrow afternoon.
Yeah. No, that's great. Thank you. That's fantastic.
Suppose the other question, a lot of this information comes from Transport Insights, as an example. So speaking about bridges earlier, where you end up reporting on what the meters done, but when you actually develop the program, it's not necessarily an option to input what you think you'll be doing for some of these activities either. So that's why some will have no data on what you forecast, because there's no option to input what you forecast. But there's an option to report what you've done.
Yeah, I'm going to ask a really silly question, which I should know after my years on here. Who actually owns Traffic Insights or Transport Insights? Is it NZTA, not MOT? I get confused with what MOT might. So that's good feedback for you, James, which I'm sure you're taking and will send back to the system developers. Which
No, I absolutely will. We are trying, obviously, to drive Transport Insights much more. The work that's done by Ridge Group is clearly very important and only going to be more important. And actually, fortunately, it's not me, but Ridge Group's chaired by one of my colleagues. So I'll pass it back.
I'm really looking forward to sending this data to any complaining constituents about the gravel on their roads. It's very, very useful, and they can hold the local councils to account. Yeah. It's yeah, but also it's the lag effect, and I am concerned. I appreciate that sometimes it's more efficient to do these things in bulk in certain years, but the lag effect of getting a very bad road for some time can be really difficult on a smaller community. Just noting that, but certainly having some equity of on the graphs about what that looks like, because certainly some councils are delivering greatly, but proportionate to the number of kilometres of their roads, and we were also interested to see. So I presume there's more gravel roads in Central Otago District Council and Clutha than there are in Invercargill City Council, for example. So it would just be good to get that data, but that's probably going one step further in due course. So thank you. Any other questions?
Yeah, Kate, if I could, I mean, just by way of example of the sort of conversation, I'm not meaning to pick on Tony. So this is just me picking on a graph that happened to pop. So this is me picking on Kia ora said. But to me, you know, if I look at the top of page 15, the drainage renewals graph for QLDC, it's just the one that happened to catch my eye. There is clearly a story that is going on between the actual drainage renewals achieved in Queenstown and the forecast. I'm really fascinated to know what that story is. I'm not interested in doing it now, but to me, this data can lead this committee into a much more rich discussion about actual maintenance and renewals, and I'm all for that.
No, I agree. I think there's some outstanding delivery, apparently, and at substantial cost over and above that's been funded. And then there's some that are looking, and it may be that the cost changes, and we appreciate the money is allocated every 3 years. There may be cost drivers that are reducing some of that delivery as well. So, but it would be, I think it's certainly getting us to a much better storytelling process. So thanks, James, I agree. Any other questions? Anyone want to interrogate their own delivery? Thanks, Joe.
Yeah, just quickly, how's this data entered? Is it doubled up if we got someone manually pulling it from all the councils, or each council just bumping it into the system? Because if the council are manually putting it in, then they could probably attach those notes too. Because I sit on the roading committee within the Gore District Councillors and get the report from Murray Hassler, which he attaches notes as to why we're doing more drainage or why we're cleaning out the roadside curb and that. So those notes could be, yeah, like what you're saying there, James, flow through into that system if it's not too much of a manual process.
We might just see if that's a note that they take, Will, and I think it'd be really good if we get that link and attached to our minutes so that we can all go and have a wee play around and see what we can see as well, so for next time. But certainly, and given that the phone just came, freely available information, that's so exciting that we're seeing it for the first time. But yeah, I presume, James, you're just noting that that's a comment, and we'll get that. We'll either play ourselves, and you'll note that there might be a change we can put into the system.
Yep.
And you can rest assured that down there, the guy with the big smile on his face, who happens to be the chair of the Reg Leadership Group, and I sit on the Reg Leadership Group.
So,
and I have certainly had significant conversations with Transport Insights. So anything that requests that are made here now will be back in Transport Insights within a week.
Okay, you know who to contact if you haven't got out your questions now. Phil.
I just have, first time I've ever looked online at Transport Insights, but I do notice there is, under the safety technical output number 9, vulnerable users, there is an opportunity to input data around hitting a horse. So maybe that starts to build some data that might support our presentation by Julie.
Yeah, I also think, only because I'm going to go out off piece slightly on this, but I think there's a conversation to be had about what are the desire lines they have in certain areas and build from that as a starting point. But yeah, we can go there later. Any other questions? Jim turned his photo on as if he wanted to speak, maybe? No?
No, I was being polite, Madam Chair, and didn't want to be eating in front of everyone.
Okay, we'll be doing that in front of you at 12:30. Sorry you're not here. I think we're going to have substantial lunch because we didn't realise how many people are coming online. Any questions on state highways? We always like to ask James questions at Challenge Him. You can see that under the rehabilitation, the delivery, and hence the wasn't quite up to it, and that's might be the pothole money now, was it? Yeah, and then that's why.
Yeah, I think exactly. You can, to me, you can see in that period exactly the story we've been trying to tell about why the change to maintenance and operations. You know, more focus over this period from us on reseals than on rehabs. You know, even against forecast, and with the minister reaching in and splitting that out, clearly our future direction of travel is to reverse that trend.
Great, thank you. Any other questions? Come on, we always like picking on James. Anyone else? No? He's having an easy day today. Low cost, low risk deliverables. Thank you, Russell, for your words on this earlier. It's certainly a lot harder to quite understand this stuff. Did you have anything else to say on that? This is the one that isn't being funded as much in the next period, isn't it?
Yeah, and because we didn't have a concentration on it at the beginning of the 3-year period, I would suggest that there's information here, take it as, if you like, as read. We consign it to history, and that we actually look for more detail around low cost, low risk going forward over the next 3 years, so that we've got, because low cost, low risk was a bit of a, it never had a great deal of scrutiny across it. It was only probably in the last 3 years that NZTA started taking a really active look at many of the low cost, low risk projects. So there wasn't a lot of detail available. So I think that, you know, let's say give ourselves barely a pass mark in that area and say we're going to do better over the next 3 years.
Very good. Any other comments on that one? No? Okay, I will move that we note that paper and thank you, and it's just going to get better and better, and I'm really grateful for the insights it has given us. And I agree with James's comment that we should be looking at that regularly to see our delivery. But I presume that has to be at the end of every financial year about now, because it's only going to be put in as part of the annual reporting, I presume. Yeah. Well, we can only hope that our councils report very rapidly and that it might be available in September rather than November.
They've got to do that. It's a timeline within NZTA.
Excellent. I presume they don't get paid until the money comes. It won't be enough works. So Christine.
Just a question, thinking about looking at this regularly in the future. What are we going to do with that information?
Tell our councils start delivering if they're not, or understand why not.
Just understand.
Yes, yes. I think there needs to be further conversation
But I think
about that, given councils are already monitoring their own delivery and there's several issues around why what is forecast may not be delivered, and if there's going to be another step from this council, we need to understand the whys and wherefores of that.
I would suggest that this information gives the Transport Committee the ability to look and say, hey, it looks as though something's happening in the Southland District. At the next meeting, can you give us a bit of an update?
Yeah, yeah.
I would hate to get to the stage where this committee was saying, Southland District, you are not putting enough gravel on your roads, go out and do it. Because this committee doesn't come up with the money.
I was being flippant with you.
But the expectation needs to be clear about this information coming in and what is the role.
Yeah, but it is a one-roading network to an extent, and I think the important thing here is we never want to be in the position of the three waters, and that we need to be understanding collectively how that, if it is going backwards, and think about, is that a capacity issue, both in the industry delivering and the technical area, and working collectively to make sure that we can overcome those. Because I think there are potentially at times better ways of sharing that stuff than we've done in the past. Because I mean, if you're driving along the road and suddenly get into something that is quite different, especially if you're a tourist, that is something that we need to be really cognizant of. It can be quite alarming difference in some roads. Boundaries, as you know. Yeah. And not holding to account, it's about how we can help to facilitate. But that's Joe's point. I think about having the notes and understanding, is it a cost blowout situation or something else?
There's something that really looks at a step, and we should, while we're preparing a report, if there's something looks really out of step, we can say, hey, can you give us an idea of that? We just put it in the report.
No, that's fine. I think you can take that information and look at the trends and
understanding,
and then that can go up to the chair's committee. Yeah. But they're having a discussion locally about that first and whether that's seen as a sensible thing.
Absolutely.
To do. Yeah.
And there will be some councils that will be affected very badly by having to deliver on flood remedial work, for example. So that capacity to deliver may in 1 year be absolutely shot for renewals. And there will be always stories that might change it with best of intent. So I'm moving, seconded. Someone, sorry, who's got their hand raised? Joe, thank you. Are you seconding it or you want to talk?
Well, I'd be happy to second it, but in seconding it, one of the things I think that we need to look at this data is instead of it being a snapshot of what has happened, we need to be looking at how we can use it going forward, how we can perhaps override parochialism and where we can work for everyone's benefit as a collective.
Mm-hmm. Yes. Agreed. So, Joe, did you want to speak as well? No,
just seconding it.
Thank you. Anyone else have any other comments or discussion or debate? I'll put the motion. All in favour, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Thanks. Carried. Thank you. Item 2, the update on approvals for activities in the 24-27 NLTP transport program. Who's going to lead this? Russell?
Thanks, Madam Chair. So I guess that, that this is much the same as information as you had at the last meeting, with the exception that there's an extra column, effectively an extra column in there. So at the last meeting, we reported on what was headed up the final requested allocation in the maintenance and renewals, and in fact, low cost, low risk area. What you asked for was, where did that actually sit in terms of the regional land transport plan that was submitted? So in other words, what were the initial, your activity management plans, the activity management plans from each of the councils? What was the forecast funding that you were including in your long-term plans? And where did that actually sit by comparison with following the figures that were the final requested allocation following discussions with NZTA about some extent the level of funding that might actually be available and what they might actually be able to what might be able to afford. So it's not a direct comparison again, and that's why if I just look at the Southland comparison tables for Gore District Council, and you'll see on the right-hand column that there's 2 items there that says no comparison due to the activity class changes. And what we found is that there were significant changes in activity in activity classes. So we're able to actually look at local road maintenance at the total figure. In Gore District there have a $21.7 million for the final requested allocations because of the GPS that came out at towards the end of June. That was split into local road operations and pothole prevention. So once again, it's not quite a direct comparison, but it's sort of a direct comparison. And in the low cost, low risk figures, bridge replacements were actually pushed into that area. They had been included in local roads maintenance. So once again, difficult to compare. But that just gives you an indication of where the first cut, if you like, based on activity management plans, as against what was finally loaded into the system as being a final requested allocation, as against what the NLTP approved allocation. So it's just a little bit more detail, but I've got to say, confused by the fact that the GPS changed activity classes, and yeah, very difficult to get direct comparison.
Yes. Any questions or comments from anyone? I think that's very clear what it's reporting and where the losses or non-deliverables will be. And it is what it is. No? Okay, I don't think there's any feedback, so I'm happy to just move number 1, which is noting the report, unless anyone has any feedback. Seconded. Bill? Thank you. Any discussion, any comments? All in favour, please say aye. Aye. Against, thank you. Item 3, current bridge replacement plan and forecasts, which is a great report, but I'm not quite sure I understand all the bridges. And so I'm really looking forward to asking some questions. Who is talking on this?
Yeah.
Russell, keep on going.
Have to be me again, sorry.
That's okay.
Second one.
Not at all.
You will know, Madam Chair, that there's only one recommendation, and that's note the report. We didn't give you the option of asking questions.
We will provide feedback if we wish to. I assure you.
So I tried to elicit some information on bridges, and once again, it's the fact that so many of them are hidden and not hidden, but included in low cost, low risk. There are a number of them that are in the process potentially being funded because they're not necessarily have, they don't necessarily have funding approved. They're going through that process. And the information that I got back was a little different from different councils, so it's in a different format. Once again, I think that we're in a situation where we ended up at the end of the 3-year period with bridges becoming a real focus, which wasn't necessarily a focus through the first 3 years of the last RLDP, and how we. So I think that it's something that we probably actually have an understanding now that the bridges are still being underfunded, but not just exactly how much. And we probably need more information or more assistance from our PAs in particular, if they're looking for assistance from the Regional Transport Committee in getting bridges and additional funding for bridges. So the individual councils may be able to elaborate a little bit more.
So, am I correct in reading this, that the only new bridges in the next 3-year term are Waitaki and Pluto?
No, Southland District.
And where's Southland District's ones?
They don't have a table, they've just got some words.
Oh, that's right, we're trying to do that, no, that's right.
Yeah.
Okay.
So I mean, once again, Hartley might be able to.
Yeah.
Let you know just where Southland District's sitting, or does a councillor want to?
The reliable information you want will come from Hartley.
Thank you, Hartley.
Yeah, so with our notification, we did attach, we're going to say just for the system, a lot of our present value calculations have submitted, but we still working through that process to get under release exactly which one.
Yeah.
What that adds up to, still working through that process with the TDA.
So
again, yeah, I mean, once we get the approvals for specific bridges, we can basically report it back.
what is driving that? I mean, Waitaki is really, Clutha is clearly the 50 max.
So ours are predominantly end of life, so they've got weight restriction on place, so you can't take a standard truck trailer unit over it at legal open road capacity at the moment. So that's a bulk of our program, just replacing those bridges that are at the end of their life.
Are those on sort of end of?
Oh, it's a combination.
Yeah, they are on system roads that we may be wanting as a resilience thing that we can't. It's really hard sitting around the table here, and if we start telling the big story about how disconnected South Island could be in an event or anything, I find it really hard if I don't see these things on maps.
Yeah, so we do it on maps.
Yeah.
So I mean that's something we can supply also, which got a picture of all our bridges, which ones are restricted, and different color coded to show which ones and where they are across the district.
I think the plan has the 50 max limit ones, doesn't it, or the heavy traffic ones, but we don't have the limit, the weight limit ones, I don't think. Or do we?
No, I'm not sure. No, I don't think. So yeah, that's something. I mean, from a Southland District Council point of view, that's something that is there. We've displayed and shared it with multiple councillors and other industry partners. But it's pretty freely available information to be seen. So we loaded, I think it was 18 bridges that we submitted already for the presentation of line calculations, and I get those across the line. I mean, that's only the first year and a half really with bridges.
Oh.
But Hartley was up 864 bridges.
Yeah, so in terms of waterway bridges, we have around 840. We've got around 60 currently some sort of restrictions in place.
And plan for replacement over the next few years.
Yeah, we got, based on the remaining useful lives of our bridges, we have around 122 that need to be replaced over the next 10 years. We know what the detour links, if any, are available for some of those bridges. And we've done it in sort of 0 to 5, 5 to 10, 10 to 15, 20 plus kilometre lengths. So it gives you appreciation of the distance or impact there might be to road users if those bridges are closed. So it's all part of the decision document and activity plan.
Is that sort of thing that's on traffic and transport and stuff now?
No, it won't be in transport, that's what's in our activity management plans.
Madam Chair, I think, once again, that would, as a committee, you're actually, starting to talk about the level of detail that you actually should be talking about and that we haven't been talking about for whatever reason. And I think that you're talking about now in level of detail that, you know, we've talked about bridges in our LTP at a very high level. But I think we actually, the story we need to be telling is in a much more detailed level. So hence the report at the last meeting where I was suggesting that we're actually going to kick that project off. We are kicking that project off really early because we want to make that a rich story. Things that Hartley's just been talking about. That's the inclusion that we need to have in that story. So I think that, you know, you're focused in on bridges. We're focused in on bridges at the end of the process where we actually didn't have a focus at the start. So there was, you know, we haven't sort of put the building blocks in place to be able to really hone in on what has been happening. But we know that that's the case now going forward for the next 3 years. And I think that we've put ourselves in a much better position. Hopefully, as staff, we're going to be in a much better position to give you the sort of information that you want, and that we're going to provide the detail in an RLTP that needs to be there.
Right. No, that's great. I'm just interested in how we prioritise as well. I mean, sometimes they are resilience as well, and sometimes they will be just into one valley, which is devastating for that one valley potentially, but not necessarily the bigger picture. We have to understand that.
I suppose that's the understanding too, is if, you know, what sort of detour, if there are any detour routes available, and what sort of things, and that's the sort of work we've done. Because from a resilience point of view, there are definitely some routes that are one way in, one way out communities. So if something does happen, what sort of access do they have?
I'm going to say something that's going to be, could be seen as negative, and it's an issue that's raised, and I want to be clear that I'm not being critical of other parts of our regional councils, but I'm also really interested in this, the conversation I'm having about the potential damage to bridges because of flood events with willows or trees of any sort, and also having our eye on managing those risks, because it's the bridges that have a long like ahead that could be compromised as well, and whether that's the abutments and the middle spans because of whether it's slash or just willows or just other matter or gravel movement, that I think we need to also be aware of. And I'm not quite, the problem is that is the question that it often isn't managed well between the TAs and the regional councils. And I'm not quite sure, I think there's a gap there, but I'm not quite sure if it's this body's gap to fill. But as far as the transport network, I think it's really important that we have our eyes on that, because too often I've heard people say, well, that's a TA issue, it's not ours. And yet, we should all be worried about being connected. Our communities need these connections.
Perhaps just to extend that, you know, hearing this discussion, I'm reflecting on the way it connects with our regional climate change planning. I understand that we've got, you know, we're investing at the moment in a greater and in-depth analysis of the hazard profile across the region, and it'll be interesting to bring that data together with the information you've got, and then overlay that, for instance, with insights from freight studies, etc.
Yeah.
To understand the intersection of these sets of data. Now, that's probably not necessarily easily necessarily implemented and analysing how they intersect, but I think it is something we need to pay attention to. It may not be through this committee, there may be other working groups or projects that allow that data to be leveraged effectively to potentially bring other information back to this committee.
Are we expecting too much? Henry?
So in the voice of the around about this bridge was built after the first world building. We couldn't notice this brown wave coming. So we kept going for it. So that's what I really think but if we have a flood event when there's damage to a new bridge, that bridge still have 50, 60 years later, I believe it was going to be people on the social. It's a new bridge problem. So it's good to have that related to the information that comes to the supplement, it's not just a private thing, but what it's about.
Yeah. Thank you. No, I agree. And I'm just really concerned. I know the some bridges that Besting has shrunk either its gravel movement or if you look up, not that far up, land use change may cause some concerns that are rising. Yeah. No, I think they're both important that we have our eyes and we understand that priority. Because there's nothing worse than a community expecting to get a new bridge, but that's absolutely goes out because of flood event, which, yeah. Although I think NZTA assisted off the Pyramid Bridge when they wouldn't do it. They had to do it as a flood event as opposed to a program work or something, which has its benefits. Joe.
Hi. Yeah, I think I've commented on this about bridges before, but we seem to have two sort of things going here. Obviously, we need a strategy involved and a planning involved around it as well. It's probably more a message sent to James, and I have put this through to the Crown Infrastructure before as well, that when we're looking at, well, we seem to have bridges as an issue across all regions at the moment, whether it's age related or event related. We need some standardization around the spans, columns, footings, bridgeheads, etc. So we can actually have them pre-designed and sitting in depots ready just to pick spans up and go and deploy in those events. But it also then reduces your cost. If you've got areas that are mass turning out spans and you can just take them out and drop them into these areas. So you've got a 7-metre span or a 14-metre span that are all up to a set grade, set standard for each region to pick up and use. Because I know Southland's got a big bridge, Southland District Council has a massive bridge issue, and Gore's got the same issue as well. We were actually looking at writing off some bridges or some roads because of that issue. Is it's a cost for us to service one farm because of a bridge. But I think just, yeah, we need a strategy around it, but we also need a plan around it. I think that's something NZTA and Crown Infrastructure also need to look at is, hey, look, we can't keep doing bespoke bridges because that adds to cost. But if we've got some cookie cutter template that, hey, every district has a batching plant turning out bridges that are at different levels that they can pick up and take out and deploy, would vastly reduce costs and you get better bang for buck, and you know what you're delivering at the end of the day.
Yeah, thank you. And actually, it's really helpful comment, Joe. It's just reminded me, and it's not on our agenda, I'm not sure that it should be, but the regional deals information that came out last week, and whether that's part of this that James may talk about, I don't know if it's in your purview or not, for co-funding or different funding.
No, it's not. But I was just going to say, look, Joe doesn't have to agree. Doesn't have to convince me. I'm fully on board with his view of the world. We are certainly doing work on standardized designs internally, and I'm absolutely certain that work will be available to local authorities. Designs is one thing, because I agree with you, Joe. You know, bespoke bridges, the cost is horrendous. But to my mind, there is also a procurement piece there, and that almost certainly is just as much us as it is TAs. So I'm still fumbling in the dark, but you know, sticking my hand up to say we as RTCs, you as TAs, we as NZTA all need to collectively have a conversation over the next, I say 3 years, but actually it's the next 12 months, let's be real, about what we need to see change in the landscape, in the policy settings, in our rules, in our procurement rules, in our funding rules, to enable, where it makes sense, that different procurement model that allows you to go for 20 bridges and, you know, and do that bulk purchase, bulk construction, you know, because I have absolutely no doubt for the sorts of networks that you're dealing with, for Southland's problems, for parts of our network, that's the approach that makes sense. But our one by one bridge replacement, it works for the low volume. It's not going to work for the volume that we've got coming. And so, you know, line of sight to that, but then thinking, okay, what needs to change in the GPS? You know, where should bridges sit in which activity class? they were moved back to local road improvements. Is that the right place for them? Are they a maintenance activity? Actually getting into that detail and working out what policy settings and other rule settings we need changed over the next 18 months, 3 years is to me a really critical task. Don't really know how to start it, but I'm here for those conversations because I think we do. I agree with you, Joe. We need to have them.
Thank you. Any other questions or comments?
Yeah, Kate, or Madam Chair, just going back to your comment of broadening the issue, I would suggest to you that bridges are the symptoms, and we need to address the issues. And I know this group's remit is not to tell councils how to deal with other issues, but on my patch after the last flooding event, there were 29 truckloads of debris removed from 3 bridges. And had the unknown regional council that oversees that waterway been a bit more proactive, perhaps it might have only been 5 or 6 truckloads.
I know you're talking about ECAN in your area, aren't you? But thank you. Look, and those are conversations I think we need to be having collaboratively and actually having an answer to, rather than, and that's why I brought it up. I'm not being critical. I want us to start having a way of having those conversations in a much healthier and not a retrospective but a proactive way. Christine.
Thank you, and I agree it will be helpful to pick this up and discuss it as you were suggesting earlier, Russell, in the Southland area and bringing it together, including initiatives that have already occurred. I think Southland districts have been looking at this problem for a long time, including looking at well, Parker can explain that better to me, but not just looking at a bespoke model, but how that can be managed, and already started to do that. So there's a lot of information sitting around that we can bring together and put into that review next time round. And also Phil's contribution. I think it's having that overlay with the regional council perspective, bring in the climate change and also the gravel or willow issues as well, because we don't need to wait to 2027 to do that. So again, to be thinking about how this committee might look at that and put it on the plan.
Thank you. Great. No other people to discuss it. You have got some guidance for us. If we just say note this report, you understand what that means. Because I think there's slightly more to it than noting this is just as and as Christine just said, this is a stage, and it's just great to see that. Can I ask, Clutha, do we actually know what these bridges are? I am intrigued.
This might seem unusual, but if you want accurate information, and I don't know the protocols, we probably have to go to Henry, because Henry has just long left us. So.
I see.
So I think the bridges, I'm not sure that obviously by looking at the money involved, they're not that big. And to be honest, I think some of them are requests to take, I'm not sure.
No, that's fine.
That's like most single lane, single span bridges.
Yeah.
That's small bridges.
They're just small ones, yeah. But they could make a big effect to the other roading network. If this is allowing shorter trips and off other roads, it could make a big effect.
I suspect, I think I know 2 of them, and I think that's not much of a detour, to be honest.
Okay. Yeah.
What one's just out of Harriet from memory. Yeah, but you're right, there are detours available for it.
And one's just on the way to come.
Okay. No, I think that's really interesting how the small problems can be major fixes in certain cases. And it's just understanding where they are. But that's all good. I'm moving that we note the report, seconded by Bruce. Any discussion, debate, or otherwise it hasn't been had? All in favour, please say aye.
Aye.
Against? Carried. Item 4. Seriously, this might be a very quick paper. I think some of us can be relieved. Others will say they've got a lot more work to do now. Speed limit setting rule update. Thank you, Russell and Lorraine, for this. I think this is a paper where Russell and Lorraine are saying, guys, this is now yours. Is that how it feels?
Yes, but not without sympathy.
Yes.
We appreciate that a number of councils with a lot of work went into that will now require time, effort, and probably cost to revisit. But unfortunately, that's what it is. What it is.
Yeah, James, I think you were very clear at the South Island Chairs meeting that there are some costs that will be recoverable by the TAs in this space.
Yeah, that's right, Madam Chair. We are expecting, subsidy requests to come in from TAs. And actually, to be fair, I haven't caught up with where the board discussion last week landed on where that money is coming from. But the Minister and the GPS are pretty clear that the work of updating speeds of the speed rule is expected to be funded from the NLTP. So we'll have to reallocate money in order to do that.
Would I be stupid to suggest that council should be doing that proactively and as quickly as possible in order to ensure that there might still be money in that pot?
The earlier we know, the earlier we can work around it.
Yeah. And so I would be encouraging all TAs to try and itemise that as quickly as possible and react as quickly as possible. It may be a shorter term. My gut feeling is that there'll be some time limits on that funding being available. Does anyone have any questions on this report I'm taking in this table?
Have we got any indication of possible timeframe?
We haven't got that, but it's just because
Is there any thinking around when that might be? Are we talking months? Are we talking a lot longer than that? Or be good to have an indication?
Sorry, time frame for what?
Just around the subsidy.
Getting the applications in.
Oh no, I assume that councils will need to work through what the rule means in terms of their programs as soon as you know what that's likely to require. The rule has time limits and a time frame for requiring changes. So most of that's over the next 9 months, to be perfectly honest, and some out to 18 months. So the sooner you know what you as officers know what those costs are likely to be, you can get in touch with us and we can work through that detail. But the rule is the time frame driving everything else.
And I may have completely wrong, but my gut feeling is just looking at everything else this government's doing, the sooner you get your funding in application, the more chance you are of getting it. Because I think they'll want to see people acting quickly on this stuff, and if you're not, then it may be put at risk. But that's just me reflecting on how some of the stuff seems to be pinning out. Instinct rather than policy. Any other questions for debate?
Just sorry, Madam Chair, just one related comment from me. It's not really the subject of the paper, but given that many of you are elected representatives and represent communities to me regularly, I would just note the NZTA has a substantial national program to undertake now to implement this rule, and that will take a not insignificant amount of resource internally to progress. The rule enables us to work with communities to lower speeds on the state highways in some instances, particularly thinking around where the state highway runs through rural townships. That's a sort of scenario that's envisaged under the rule. I am trying to maintain a list of communities that have expressed a desire and interest to lower speeds, just so that I have an awareness of where communities would like those conversations to occur. But realistically, we have an enormous amount of work over the next 12 months. And so I'm happy to entertain that. Please do come to me if your community is interested in that sort of consultation, but we are very unlikely to undertake anything of that nature in the next 12 months while we progress the time-bound changes that this rule enforces.
Joe.
Yeah, just back to James here. What is your planning and strategy around the 50-year and 75-year plan of where the state highway goes through these towns, just to keep traffic moving, like ring roading these towns like they do in Europe and that. So you've got your transport moving faster instead of slowing down, and it removes the risk from those towns as well. Like you end up spending a lot on safety within those towns on those state highway sections, when it might actually be cheaper just to ring road the whole town bypass and just have detours off to it. Like at the end of the day, you want to do a long trip through to Christchurch. Well, once you get into some towns, especially Oamaru, that's an absolute drag. Like there's half your trip just going on the road from Gore to Christchurch.
Having done that trip, I'm not sure Oamaru is half the trip, but I get your point. Look, long term, you're looking at a document like Arataki, which is our 30-year plan, but that's being updated, and it's worth saying that update is sort of now contingent on the thinking we have to undertake under this GPS to move the NLTP into a 10-year plan, right? So there's a bunch of interrelated plans here that need to interact properly, and so they need to change. Take what I just said about the speed rule envisaging lowering speeds through towns. That isn't a given. It's a process, and part of the process the speed rule requires us to undertake will be an economic analysis of the costs and benefits of doing that. So you are trading off travel time and economic activity versus, I guess, the lower speed environment that some people want to see from a safety or a livability point of view. Really, fundamentally, it's driven by volume. These sorts of things. Just picking on the route that you chose, State Highway 1, Christchurch to Gore, the biggest town that you can't easily get through on that trip isn't a town at all. It's the city of Dunedin. There isn't a cheap option to bypass Dunedin, and I say cheap, I mean cost-effective option to bypass Dunedin. So we end up in conversations basically with DCC or the local community about how to trade off that speed environment through Dunedin versus the through traffic, and how much volume is actually going through versus going to. Next one after Dunedin's places like Timaru, Oamaru, Ashburton. Those are all about volume. How much volume is trying to get around. We've got early work to look at in this NLTP period to look at the corridor Christchurch to Timaru, port to port.
Yeah.
I suspect we're not talking bypass of Timaru yet, but we should probably be talking about when that, what the trigger points for that are. Likewise, Ashburton's quite a long way away from conversations about a bypass. It is about trading off flow and what interventions you can have on the state highway corridor through Ashburton, as opposed to the not insignificant cost of going around, not least of which because there's a river in the way, and then we're into conversations about yet another bridge. And I'm already dealing with the needs that we've got in the community at the moment. So it no easy solution, Joe. It really is case by case by case, town by town. The smaller the community, the more we can tweak rather than bypass. But
thank you, James. I think Jim, Bruce and myself are just laughing at the thought that Timaru would have another bypass, because in our lifetimes they've already had one bypass.
That's the story of the New Zealand State Highway, Madam Chair, bypassing bypasses. And
then our councils allow, especially that industrial drive in, drive out, subways and McDonald's and all of those commercial uses that then clutter those whole systems up again. But Belclutha hasn't done that, I have to say. Their heavy bypasses seem to work. Since we're here, can I ask two questions of you, James, as examples? One is Port Chalmers, since Jim isn't here, Jim O'Malley isn't here, because that was a very hard fought for one when I was on the ECC as a state highway with a low speed. Is that likely to stay, or is that likely to change under this new?
I'm hesitant to give you a definitive answer just because I fear giving you the wrong answer. But if you'll forgive me, no, I think it's likely to stay. But let me definitively say I haven't checked that in the last week.
That is a particularly unclear question. The question is, what should the TA be doing if it is concerned about it being at risk? Should they be doing anything So highlighted as an issue.
No, genuinely, there is nothing you can do in the short term. The rule requires reversion in many cases, and so that you don't get a choice about that. You just have to do it, and that's true for local roads as it is for parts of the state highway. Where the rule gives NZTA discretion to seek community endorsement, effectively, of maintaining a lower speed, we're working through that now, where that can take place under the rule and when that might take place. So there's frankly nothing a TA can do there either. If it is a case of reversion, then the simple answer is, and I can think of a couple of examples where the rule requires us to re-raise the speed. We know the community wants a lower speed, and we will be coming back out to the community in time to lower the speed again. It's just the way the rule is written, requiring the reversion. We just have to let that play out over time. Unfortunately, that's just the way the rule works.
Chad looked interested there. Was he going to add a comment?
Me,
He's
no,
always looking-
admiring James's response.
Okay, thank you. And the only other one is, given we've just got the petition from Waititi, is whether we as a committee should be feeding back anything on that. It was a fairly compelling case given by the the West Harbour, I think it was, Community Board.
So that's a perfect example of what I mean. If I am included on that correspondence, I can make sure that they are kept on our list, so that when we have the resourcing and ability to come out to the community to talk about the speed environment on State Highway 1 through those two communities, we will. But it won't be in the next 12 months because we've got an awful lot of reversions to do first.
Okay, would it be inappropriate for us to note that the response that as part of these motions that answer really, because I just want to close the loop on the petition because it was tabled with us, is that will become that will be referred to NZTA and their processes for dealing with the speed restriction, and then it just completes the.
Totally fine. Fine by me. Yep.
Sense to you, Jen. Just making sure that I'm just going to ask that we note the petition that came to the last. It was the last meeting or the meeting before. It was the last meeting. Sorry, that we note that and then that closes that action off, and that will be considered by NZTA in their speed management plan for the state highway or the process. Any other comments or suggestions on the recommendation or on the report? Any examples of costs for these TAs? If anyone has got any? No. Okay, I'll move those with that addition for the petition, seconded by Phil. Any other comments, debate? All in favour, please say aye. Aye. Against, carried. Thank you. Racing through this today. NZTA update. If you haven't given us everything already, James, is there anything else you'd like to add?
No, Madam Chair, other than to simply say, look, I don't have a lot for you. I can't believe how quickly the time between meetings has passed. It's just an example of where we are in the cycle. Not that I mean this to be taken negatively by anyone in the committee, but I've just been honestly flat out dealing with emergent issues in other regions that I'm responsible for. Things like state highways trying their very best to wash themselves into the ocean on the west coast, and the very big task of trying to get forward progress on our road of national significance just north of Christchurch, which is going well, but isn't really the business of this committee. So look, happy to take questions. Is probably the easiest place to go.
I would say the West Coast is very much one of this committee, given it's a doorway to Otago, very much on the tourist route or the exit, and it compromises the experience or the tourists even arriving.
Well, would you like me to give you a situation update on the bottom end of State Highway 6?
Personally, does anyone else want to hear it? That's the question, because I would love to hear it. Yeah, yes, I would like to hear it from Southland as well.
Right, perfect. Okay, so yeah, no, you're right, Madam Chair. State Highway 6 is a vitally important link to Otago and then through to Southland. It is for if one's considering contiguous state highways, the longest state highway in New Zealand. So what are we now? About 3 weeks ago, we had a significant rainfall event in Southwestland that decided it would park itself over or near about Haast. It caused pretty significant flooding, pretty significant damage to Jackson's Bay, and most importantly, from our perspective, it caused movement on the two slips, the overslip and the underslip, at Knights Point and Epitaph, which is, for those who don't know, just north of Haast, the point at which the state highway swings out to the coast around Lake Moeraki before heading south down that coast to Haast. So Epitaph is the site of the state highway's largest underslip in the country. It's a significant slip. It's always been a risk point for us. The rain caused saturation of the slope, and the road cracked about 15 centimeters a meter deep, which are significant cracks, and that underslip is extremely close to the state highway and very, very large. So it's significant enough to close the road by itself, but actually the road was also closed because we had a significant amount of rockfall from above the road as well that fell onto the road. So crews, once the weather abated, got in. There's lovely video on social media of them trying to clear the slope above. What you will see if you look at that video closely is that there's almost no structural integrity to the rock above the road as well. And that was always our concern, is once that slope stability starts breaking, there really, you keep chewing back into the hillside. There's just nothing there. We have managed to clear it substantially enough to be able to protect the road base, build a bund, and clear the rockfall in order effectively to create some space for more rock to fall into. That's allowed the crews to stabilize the slope, to effectively glue is the wrong word, but that's the word I'm going to use, to glue the cracking back together, to install much more drainage at Epitaph, and to install more live monitoring. So we've got significant monitoring at the slip now. The road is open to all vehicles during the day. We're continuing to do more rock work, and we have set up signals that are triggered by the monitoring. So it's our view that, if there's movement, the signals will go and it won't allow vehicles in. So it's as safe as we can get it for now. For those careful observers, the NLTP this time round has a line item called, I think it's State Highway 6 Haast to Hawea, and even though Haast to Hawea is actually outside this area, the purpose of that business case is to focus on the resilience risk of that corridor, and that primary resilience risk is at this point at Epitaph. So over this 3-year period, we will progress investigation work on what a medium-term solution for Knights Point and Epitaph might look like. You hear and see various options progressed, talked about in the community, whether it's viaducting, whether it's progressing an entirely alternative route. The short answer is there are no good options here. It is an extremely unstable part of the country. The geology is bad. There is a reason the state highway was put on its alignment, on the alignment that it is at the moment, as opposed to going the inland route. That's because the inland route is covered by about 4 different fault lines and would be exposed to significant rockfall risk itself. So we simply have to work through the work over the next couple of years to understand how to keep this route open as best we can. There isn't an easy fix that we've been ignoring. So short answer, road's open. We understand exactly how critical it is to the local and regional economies of both that part of the Upper Clutha and as the ring route, from Glacier Country around the west coast and through an Otago and out to Canterbury. All we can do is work to keep it open as best we can.
Thank you, and I commend the NZTA staff, but I have to say it's also the people actually on the ground working that site. It really makes you realise, especially perhaps the name of the site, how dangerous and the conditions that we send people out to work on them, and how quickly given that I think it was reopened within 2 weeks, considering the size of it, it's a pretty massive and scary undertaken by the people on the ground, who may or may not have intended working that week, but they get called in and they have to react very, very quickly. It really does make us very grateful to those people and contractors out there and the staff of NZTA. Yeah.
No, thanks, Kate. Look, I would just note some of those crews doing that rockfall risk, they're actually staff who ordinarily spend their day job keeping Nevis Bluff from damaging the same state highway further down closer to Queenstown. So they're an amazing crew.
Yeah, no, it is really incredible. And do pass, I wouldn't mind adding to the motion that we do thank them, because I'm sure that they don't always get that recognition at this level, that how they work. I would just, yeah. You talk about putting the glue back, which made me think of anyone who's played with sandcastles and trying to pour some water on and think how do you rebuild it afterwards. It just sounds at scale terrible and very, very hard. Any other questions or comments about any of that, or any matters on the NZTA's purview coming up, especially given that it's open for the Christmas and holiday season and maybe not be any more events? I think Jim wanted to talk about something or comment.
Yeah, well, thank you, Madam Chair. On a sort of related issue, I'd like some advice from James. The recent flood event south Otago through to North Otago, coastally, Waka Kotahi or NZTA closed State Highway 1. At the Civil Defence debrief, a couple of issues were raised. One was that I understand we have to err on the side of caution, but there were people living within the closed off areas that were getting in their cars and driving north or south, totally unaware that the state highway had been closed. And secondly, when we close the state highway, is there a staged opportunity of where we can say that the roads are still open for emergency services? Because in that particular rainfall event, the rescue helicopter couldn't work. And I know, for example, in speaking with Hatahone, that they were trying to negotiate over Mount Cargill and round the coastal road to get to Waikouaiti on a call out, when they could have actually come straight up State Highway 1 because the slipping hadn't taken the whole road out but was only partial. So is there an opportunity for a halfway house, James?
Difficult is the short answer. Look, I'm dredging my memory, but I'm not recalling anything particular to that event. So I'm going to say we close roads in emergency events because Civil Defence has asked us to. We rarely act on our own behalf in those regards. So either the police or Civil Defence are the ones asking, or taking the road closure decision. We're not, in that sense, the first responder. We're responding to the emergency management situation, and then the question about road clearance and the road closures are enforced by emergency services. So our teams can and sometimes do in certain circumstances, like Alpine Passes, do the sweep to clear the road, try to get people out. But whether a road is safe to navigate or not, in that sense, that's a police responsibility during the event. We're just not that agency. It's not our role or function. Come to the very specifics of ambulance access and things like that, and it will absolutely depend on the view of the road, and we could probably have a conversation offline about how that assessment is undertaken and how emergency services are tasked during an event like that. But just leaving you with the overall point, we're trying not to act outside of or separate to the actual emergency response, which is driven either at a local or regional level.
Thank you. I'd suggest possibly the police are going to be the better people to help in that case then. Yeah. Okay. Any other questions of James? Does anyone mind if I add from our table a thanks to the staff and the contractors for working on State Highway 6 and dealing with it so quickly and hope that they're doing the same over this holiday season. Phil's happy to second that.
I think Joe's got a question before you do, Madam Chair.
Yeah, I was just going to add to that comment there, James. You are correct. As a member of the fire service, during an emergency, we are beholden to civil defence. You are correct. The police are responsible for clearing. We are only directed in on the grounds of civil defence and of police for doing clearance also, where they lack of manpower. So in the case of road closures, we are notified via Firecon. We're also usually notified by the local roading authority of the district we're operating within. So I can go back to the 2020 Gore floods, where we were getting notifications of what roads they were going to close. So we could pre-position fire appliances so we could act accordingly, knowing that the town was actually going to be cut off. So we put appliances on 2 different parts of town. And as the roads, or as we're called to events, we were getting updates through Firecon with what roads were closed so we could react accordingly to how we could respond to it. So there is a good flow of information there. I think it becomes a bit harder when it's a broader event. I'm just thinking back to the one we had so earlier this year. Last year in Gore, where it was both Southland and Gore affecting events, and Emergency Management Southland, more of their focus was down on the South Waikato area, and that information doesn't flow or happen as well in a larger event across the area, whereas it's more specific. They can react quicker accordingly.
Right. Okay. I think we're all done. I'm moving, or someone else can move that actually. Phil's moving it and Christine can second it. I'm sorry, I'm doing it as an admin efficiency, which I shouldn't do. On that basis, any discussion or comments? All in favour, please say aye. Aye. Against? Carried. There's the South Island Regional Transport Committee chairs, just minutes for your circulation and for your information, I think. Was there a motion with that? Just for no conversation. No, the report provide feedback. Any feedback needed? You go to Jeremy or myself or Phil or Alexa. Any comments, criticisms? It's a really interesting stuff happening at that table, and getting the South Island story together and freight movements is going to be helpful. I'm just going to, Phil's going to move that one. Seconded, Bruce.
Yes, you've got a comment. I think the meeting was only held on the 11th, wasn't it? It would be really useful, though I don't know that it's possible to have the minutes for this meeting.
Yes.
Because it's another, 6 months till we
Yes.
meet again.
We'll get them out to you as soon as possible. I appreciate that. We try, and the fact is that they haven't in the past been tabled. Yeah. I think I've checked. I'm not sure I've signed them all. I will check that. Yeah. Thank you. Tiaras.
I don't know that they.
I can't remember if they're out or not.
Yeah,
Sorry.
he can do all the admin for everything.
Yeah. I can't remember if I've seen them or not.
Before you close off the discussion, Madam Chair, there are 2 items that there was a really quite interesting presentation from the Infrastructure Commission, and we have asked them if we can circulate it, but they haven't come back and said yes.
Right.
So otherwise you would have included that in the agenda. The other one is the freight study. The chairs have given staff a very clear directive that for the next 2 steps be progressed with urgency, to the extent that we, with the staff group, we've had a meeting to work out how we can complete the scope, complete the potential contract documents, etc., to have for the chairs at the first meeting of 2025. That project will actually start to give us, I believe, that the information that we hoped that we would be able to get out of stage one, but we just couldn't. There's too many gaps. Just still too many gaps in the data available. So the things are happening quite quickly in that area as well.
Right. How did the next two steps get funded? Was the funding already
Very
decided
good
to come back
question.
to here? Yeah.
Very good question. No, it doesn't come back there. It doesn't necessarily come back to here, but it does come back to the regional council. So the regional, the chairs group is funded by under a formula by each of the regional councils through their transport planning functions, not the regional transport committee. However, and we make a payment or a contribution every year to the operation of the projects that the chairs are actually working on. There's a slightly bigger dollar value involved in what we're going to be doing and how we actually fund that as part of the next step that we'll look at.
We've told them to report back early if they need that solved.
Yeah.
Because we want to progress it.
So first stage was actually delayed as we tried to get funding, subsidised funding from NZTA, and that just didn't happen in over the last 9 months or the last one up until June. So the chair said we're going to do it anyway because it's important, which is what's happened. For the next steps, NZTA have said that it's unlikely that they will be able to directly fund that project, but they have said that they will be able to provide in-kind funding. In other words, we're looking for analytics to be done. Their analytics team would be able to work on it. If we're looking for assistance in planning functions or policy functions, they will provide that. So they are very much part of the management group or the overseeing, the steering group for that whole project. What the final bill looks like, we will know when we've finished scoping it and had some conversations with potential contractors.
And this may seem a silly question, but the Ashburton Bridge and the ferries, is that
very much part of.
And we've given a decision coming out next month, 11th of December or whatever.
We will incorporate whatever the decision is into.
They report that.
Yeah, and the Lower North Island have heard about the work that we were doing and said, actually, we should be doing something similar. So Greater Wellington, into the Wairarapa, etc. That
Anything
area,
outside
Hawke's Bay,
anything outside the Golden Triangle.
yeah, are looking at a very similar project that will have a direct link onto the ferries, because what they're doing is saying we need to be able to get stuff from the other side of the hills surrounding Wellington, through Wellington and onto the ferries south. So we are linking those two projects.
And coastal. And coastal as well. No other hands up. So we've
Sorry,
noted-
Kate.
Yes.
Sorry, I just wanted to reinforce the relevance of the Infrastructure Commission presentation. So
Yes.
if for example, if by some strange reason they don't want that presentation shared, I would strongly recommend that the committee ask them to come and do it again for this committee, because I thought it was really valuable.
Yeah, it wouldn't hurt, although the opportunity is now. So I actually shared it with Bruce the other day, but he couldn't open the connection. They are out actively consulting at the moment, and I'm going to ask that Jen I'll send it to you, the link to their infrastructure strategy. I think there is a key, it's really key that we all be inputting on that, whether it be roading or flood or whatever infrastructure. It was a really interesting way that they're looking at how things are funded and an opportunity. Did you want to give any other feedback since James on that, or does anyone else want to give any feedback about that presentation? Yeah, it is an opportunity for looking at completely different ways of doing things. It's not just saying it has to be rates, some of the stuff, or NZTA or government contributions. Phil, you were there. Anything else to add?
I would just emphasise, I'd be very keen to get a second look at it.
Yeah.
On the basis that that connects to so many other things and that we consider.
Okay, if people are thinking that way, what we could do is ask to do it online before the next meeting. So I'm going to bring that up again in the next item. How about if I do that? Because it was a really interesting presentation. Okay, so if we just note that report.
I've noticed it's labelled up as South Island Fright Study, so it really encouraged me to read it.
She needs some excitement in her life, Christine, she goes for the horrors. Yeah, we'll check that it's, once it is out, that it's, we've checked. I'll move that motion, I think it's seconded by Phil, no, Phil, Christine, second, yeah. All in favour, please say aye. Against, carried. Are we going to run through this? We're going to finish the meeting today before lunch, I think, so we're not going to stop. Except for Jim's going to have to watch us eat since we watched him eat. The next item is the next meeting. It is not the final item, so I don't think we're finishing quickly. So the suggestion is that the next meeting be the 5th of May, I think that's all. So I'm scrolling backwards and forwards. I'm happy with the motion, except for that if infrastructure people are infrastructure commission people are happy to present to us sooner, I think that we should do just that session, because I think it does tie up with the presentation, will help you inform your councils about the infrastructure strategy survey they're doing. So I would ask if we could facilitate that online this year even. I don't know when they, can anyone remember off the top of your head when that closes?
Sure, we can.
Yeah,
We can get in touch with them and see if they're available, organise an online meeting for the committee for them to do a presentation.
Yeah, the same one they did at.
I think it's 10th of December though, it's a short turnaround.
Oh, yeah.
I see preparing its own submission on it. I don't know if the other councils are, but it might not be in time for.
Yeah.
The 5th of that.
Maybe challenging getting it in the diaries.
Yeah, maybe challenging. We'll see if we can do it. And sorry, I didn't think about it. I should have shared it with all the councils rather than just with one, but it was just a conversation we were having at the time. So we'll see if we can make that happen, but Heidi will certainly send the link later today about that. So 5th of May, otherwise, we're all happy with that, no?
Just discussion, 5th of May is fine. The triennium finishes in October. Is there a second meeting planned prior to the end of the triennium?
We will have.
Right, okay.
So, so that 5th of May meeting is it's actually mentioned there as an RLTP development workshop. There's two things. If, depending on what happens over the next couple of 3 months, and we normally have something in there that says that I don't know that specifically there in the recommendation, but if the chairs need to, they can call a meeting if needed earlier. So let's do that. But my proposal would actually be that meeting, that would be a workshop, probably in the morning and the meeting in the afternoon. And by that time, we hope to have some really good relevant background data for you to confirm as through the workshop and discussed as being the front part of the RLTP. And then at least would like to have a meeting where you are able to say you're happy with that as an early ground before the election.
Yeah, that would be good, because it takes a while for new people to come up to speed, and it's quite essential that we get that.
The reason we want to do it as early as.
So in this discussion, and I don't know how public it is, so that regional deals thing, I think we also need to be making sure we've got that in our heads when we talk about infrastructure as well. So I don't know the scope of that, we've just been emailed about last week. So I'm just going to put that in that piece of infrastructure commission as well. Because it's each region has one priority project. So, and that's, you're happy with that recommendation because we can bring in that infrastructure in there if it is a workshop type meeting. Any other discussion? All okay with that? We clear as about the recommendation? All in favour? Oh, sorry, moving seconding. Jim seconding that one. You put his hand up then. All in favour, please say aye. Okay, thanks. Carried. The urgent matters that I noted that we needed to have a discussion about, although possibly can't do any action on, is the stairs. Jim had a quick discussion about that at the start. Stuart, this is a matter that you raised. If you're still there, Stuart. The question is.
I'm here.
Yeah, so you, we have already raised the issue that you raised with me about stairs, which is stock truck. Although some of them don't have stock, they just have stock influent disposal fields. So some are sets and some are steads. But the question is, is there a role for this committee? And A, where they are, where I don't think they are in South, and B, what is the alternative if trucks cannot deposit? Because it just becomes a terrible nightmare on the roads. And as farmers, I absolutely categorically think people should be resting stock, and that is the duty of the farmer, but they're not on in the cab when the truck gets overloaded and can't discharge. So I'm not
I guess there's a couple of issues there. Some of the meat companies aren't taking the effluent as well, and I think that's the discussion. And I was actually in the Christchurch show talking to one of the meat companies up there, and the problem they've got is when they put their effluent onto their pastures, they're breaching their nitrate levels. So there's a two double-sided coin here a wee bit, because they can't treat their own. So that's a regional council issue or an ECAN or a district issue. And just sheer lack of numbers of them probably in Southland will be another issue of dump stations, because a lot of that effluent's been carted south north. And I know even in Central Target District, it comes through the Linders and it gets put in our ratepayer base. So it's generated, the problem's generated in Southland, and we're paying for it here. But the closure of the two at Picuri, obviously in the Shag River, is a bit of a concern as well. And, you know, are there enough? That's the argument in the bottom half of South Island.
And the other part of that is the Oamaru or Waitaki ones temporary or permanent, and how long it will be that they are closed? Yeah. And
yeah, they're temporary, aren't they? Temporary closures, and I hope.
I might be able to add to that conversation. I understand that part of the problems we've got, Stu, is the same as the meat companies. Putting that into our effluent plant at Oamaru is causing us to be in breach of what we're spraying out. So regional council have stood over us with a big stick. So the first way to deal with that was stop the problem, shut the effluent deposits down. Is the one at Waka White, which is in DCC, it's closed as well, I think.
So it leads to the point, why do we have them at all then? If that's the case, the ratepayer's not going to use them.
Jim, as a trucker, you've taken the trucking companies. I think you've just taken your mute off for a reason.
I have, yeah. Look,
I will leave to comment.
Yeah, I mean, I just want to sort of get things into context here. I mean, there's a few issues going on, and one of them is the lack of standing of stock. And like we generally as an industry don't have any problem with sheep and beef farmers. They understand the situation and they play by the rules pretty well. But we've got a massive dairy industry now that it's not their priority, and when they get rid of their cull cows, that's not a priority to stand the stock. So that exacerbates the issue. The other reason too is that the livestock stock agent industry are buying and selling stock on a live weight basis now. It's becoming a reasonably common practice, and regardless of whether you stand your stock or not, they're actually going to discount so what they do is they weigh the truck with the animals on, and then they weigh the truck with the animals off, and then they divide it by the head, and that's what you get paid. And they will deduct 6% of the weight of the animals, regardless of whether you've stood your stock or not. So that completely disincentivizes the industry to stand their stock. It exacerbates the problem, and then on top of that, we've got these closures, and we've got people that that just can't get rid of the effluent out of their trucks, and we've sort of arrived at a bit of a dead end where we just don't know what to do next. Without these stock effluent dump sites open, we've got a big problem. What I can say is our association, Transporting New Zealand, worked with an NZTA consultant last year, and we understand that there's at least 5 new stock effluent disposal sites throughout the country that are in the latest NLTP, and what the priority number 1 is one in Southland that is due to be built in Lawnville, we understand. So Stu's right. If you look at the map, there's a massive hole in Southland where there's no dump sites. But the reason I want to force the issue is that we just need to get those ones open in the Waitaki district, so that our operators have got somewhere to dispose of the effluent as they're passing from south to north or vice versa.
Can I understand what the law is if you discharge onto the roads?
Yes, I can talk to you about that, and I actually have the act in front of me here now. So stock effluent is not regarded as a load. The definition in the Land Transport Act of 1998 is that stock effluent is not part of the load. But if you spilt effluent when you have no stock on board, then you will be infringed as an insecure load. If you have animals on board and you spill stock effluent, then you will not be infringed. But and I guess the point I want to just make here while I've got the opportunity is what we don't want to see is our operators, and we won't encourage this, I can assure you of that. We don't want our operators to drive around with their tanks open when they're loaded and tanks closed when they're empty, when they don't have stock on board, because that's just not going to help anybody.
James, you put your hand up.
Only from ignorance, Kate, not because I have a great deal of knowledge of the law here, but I just wanted to poke on that answer because it didn't entirely strike me as satisfactory. That Land Transport Act might be one thing, but surely under the RMA, it's still an illegal discharge.
And James, look, if I can just comment, Don Polisi, my CEO that you'll be familiar with, has actually sought an answer with that from that perspective, because an issue with one of our operators of exactly this nature was raised at the Waikato Regional Council, and we've asked the question of that, and at this stage haven't had an answer, is my understanding.
And other good questions. I think the answer we really need is what is the collective. Oh, Stuart, you weren't waving at us, you were waving at someone else.
Someone else, you're right, Kate. Sorry about that.
That's okay. That's okay. Focus. I don't know what the answer is here. I think it's a really good discussion. I think we all need to know what the program is for Waitaki, especially in this case, but also Lawnville. And it is something that I know that I would be, it's interesting that you say that the beef and I think seriously, some of us have to talk to fed farmers and get them to work with the livestock agents to fix that.
But what's the point of having your dump stations if the regulatory authorities can't get rid of the effluent because they're breaching the nitrate levels? So it's a regional council issue because obviously there's no exemption for it. So therefore you may as well not have them at all. And then
or you need more sites, or they need more sites to treat.
Yeah, but they're going to, if that's the case, then even if it's in Southland and they've got to get rid of the nitrates out of there, they'll breach in time with the sheer concentration. They'll breach their levels as well, and we're no better off. I can understand Waitaki, but we were told by the regional councils to put them in Central Otago. It's our ratepayer pays for it. Not even the transport industry doesn't pay for the farmers. It's a ratepayer. But once you can't put them through a treatment plant, then we'll all be capped over time.
Maybe we should be charging the trucks per load, and that's the only way we can incentivise them to be dealt with fairly.
Kate, if I could just talk about that. I mean, any operator of significant size has their own truck washers and their own facilities, and are dealing with exactly the same thing, trying to manage manage their effluent disposal with their own regional councils. So and look, from the tones of the emails from that we've received so far from the Waitaki District Council, we could tell there's a user pays desire there. And I get where you're coming from with that, but the reality is that our industry can't afford it, and they're already dealing with it with their own facilities.
Okay, Jim, do you want to answer that?
Well,
I don't want to.
Just right here.
Oh, sorry. Sorry.
Yeah. So this waste, is it then being piped into human waste facilities, or is it just being stored and then irrigated on pasture elsewhere that we're sent to be overloading nitrates on?
No, they're being, the only way that they can be dumped is into the existing settling ponds with the town sewage. So, look, I understand Waitaki's CE is talking with ORC's CE, but at the end of the day, Stu, I'm with you in terms of we've got 13,000 ratepayers in Waitaki. NZTA provided the sites, ORC provided the dumps, and if you'll excuse the pun, Waitaki's left with the shit.
Okay, I think I'm going to leave this discussion. There's a really live issue here. I don't think we can deal with it today. The question is whether we get a report on it or whether we get some thinking on it. I'm not sure what the answer is to move it forward. It is definitely something that has to be resolved. The worst thing that can be, it is not good, and it's both a safety and health issue if it does spew out or get spilled. I'm not quite sure what the resolution should be, or whether we just leave it as no, that is a matter that's been brought up and something may come out of it.
I think we can. One, we can actually have a look at the ones that are closed as staff, and give you an update on those and the reasons perhaps behind it.
Yeah.
Most of the things the topics that have been brought up now, about the third time around the wheel that I've seen them near the same question. So it's probably time to revisit it again and to have a better plan of where we go in the future. So we can do that and bring it back.
There has to be a capacity that isn't being met that we need to deal with or understand, and maybe part of that freight actually works, because it is a freight issue of sorts.
We can bring something back to this.
As of an initial discussion between the regional council and the TAC, see if they can solve the situation. If it needs to come up, I think it will be come back to here, because it's going to be different in each area, and get a more understanding of what's needed and what are the solutions. Because if there's not one, then why are we putting another one in the Louisville, for example?
Yeah. And there's a difficult issue because the expertise around this table definitely do not want to be in the space. I think it's more waste space that makes it really hard to interfaces at this point.
Yeah.
So,
Madam Chair, if I could just very quickly, one more thing. There is a very valuable.
Is this about states?
Yes, it is.
Something else?
No, it's about the states. Now, there's a document that was put together in 2003, and I know that's over 20 years ago, about the minimisation of stock effluent, where all stakeholders, the processors, the transport industry, and the stock and station agents, and that were involved. Where they put together a document that to point out that the load was the animal and the effluent, you know, and whoever owned that was responsible for dealing with it, not the transport industry. And the reason that document, my understanding is the reason that document was put together was because someone had got killed on a motorbike, actually skidding on stock effluent that was discharged from a truck. So, you know,
Joe, if you've got a copy to that, it'd be helpful if you sent that through that'd be very helpful.
Absolutely. Yep. I'll do that.
Okay, that takes us past that item. We have no other extraordinary or urgent business. Noted at start. Anyone else? Do we? Good. Up, no, nothing on public excluded. That we know of. That takes us to the karakia. Thank you, Phil, and thank you all for your attendance today and participation. It's been great. I'm not going to say with a month to go anything else about the season.
Right, close with a mantra from a different culture before my PowerPoint battery goes dead. May the road rise to meet you, may the wind be always at your back, may the sun shine warm upon your face, may the rain fall soft upon your fields, may the hand of a friend always be near, may good luck be with you wherever you go.
Good. Thank you very much. Best wishes all. Thank you.
Thank you.